Look at the last thing you carved into something that wasn't yours to mark. The initials in a school desk. A name scratched into wet concrete. A heart pressed into the bark of a tree no one asked you to touch. You did it without deciding to. A small, stubborn signal that said, I was here. This was me. You felt the pull before you understood it. Now hold that feeling. Because tens of thousands of years ago, someone felt the exact same pull and answered it by crawling alone into the deepest dark of a cave where no eye would ever find what they made. They painted in a place chosen so that no one could see it. The question is why? You probably picture cave art the way it shows up in textbooks. A wide, sunlit mouth of stone. Families gathered near the fire. Paintings on the walls like decoration in a living room. Something to look at while you eat. Almost none of it is like that. The most striking art is not at the entrance. It is deep inside. Hundreds of meters back, down passages so narrow you have to crawl, through chambers that have never seen a single ray of sun. Places where, the moment your light goes out, the darkness is total and absolute. You cannot see your own hand. You cannot find the wall you just touched. And that is exactly where they chose to paint. Think about what that means. To make this art, they had to carry fire into the black. They had to plan it before they ever lifted a brush. And to even see it once it was finished, someone else would have to do the same. Find the passage, bring a flame, crawl in on their hands and knees. This is not decoration. You do not hide your decoration where no one will stumble onto it. You do not climb down into the throat of the earth to put up a picture for the family to enjoy. The easy answer is that caves were simply where people lived. But that breaks the moment you look closer. People lived near the entrances in the light. The art is somewhere else. Past where anyone slept, past where anyone ate, in the parts of the cave a person would have every reason to avoid. So they were not painting where they were. They were going somewhere to paint, choosing the dark, on purpose. And the deeper anyone looked, the stranger the answer got, because the oldest of these paintings would end up rewriting who we even are. Walk into the Chauvet Cave in southern France, and you walk into a hut frozen in stone. Horses surge across the wall. For of them, heads stretched forward as if mid-gallop. Lions stalk in a pride, eyes forward, muscles drawn in confident black line. Rhinos lock horns. There are more than 400 animals here, and they are not crude. They are good, drawn with shading, with movement, with an understanding of how a body moves through space that would not look out of place in a sketchbook today. And here is the thing that stops you. None of this was ever meant to be seen in daylight because daylight does not reach it. To stand in front of these horses, you have to be holding fire. The flicker of a torch is the only way these animals have ever been looked at. In the dark, they move. The unsteady light makes the legs seem to run. The work at Chauvet has been studied for decades by Jean Clottes and his colleagues at France's CNRS, and refined by a campaign of dozens of radiocarbon dates. The oldest images are around 37,000 years old. Sit with that number. 37,000 years. Before farming. Before writing. Before the wheel, before the city, before anything you would call history. The pyramids are closer to you in time than these horses are to the people who painted them. Someone with a mind like yours took charcoal and ochre into the black, knelt by the small light of a fire, and made horses run across a wall no daylight had ever touched. And then they put out the fire, and left them there, in the dark, for no one. And 37,000 years, as old as that is, turns out not to be old enough. The next date would break the story completely. But here is where it gets stranger. For a long time, the story was simple. This was us. Modern humans, Homo Sapiens, arriving in Europe with new minds and making the first art. Cave painting was supposed to be the proof that we were special, the species that crossed some line into imagination. Then the dates broke. In 2018, a team led by Dirk Hoffmann, with Alistair Pike of the University of Southampton, published their results in the journal Science. They used uranium-thorium dating on the thin mineral crust that grows slowly over cave paintings. And at 3 sites in Spain, the art underneath came back older than 64,000 years. That number is impossible to ignore, because 64,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had not yet reached Europe. There was only one kind of human painting on those walls. Neanderthals, the cousins we were taught to picture as brutish, dim, barely human. They were carrying pigment into the dark and pressing their hands to the stone tens of thousands of years before we showed up. A red disc painted onto the rock. A ladder of lines. A hand stencil blown in ochre. A Neanderthal placing a palm against the wall and spraying pigment around it, leaving the cold negative shape of a hand that says the same thing yours does in wet concrete. I was here. And it was not only Europe. On the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia, the other side of the planet, Maxime Aubert and Adam Brum of Griffith University found a hunting scene painted on a cave wall at least 44,000 years ago. Tiny human-like figures, animals, a story. Two different kinds of human, opposite ends of the earth. The same impulse in the same dark. This is still running inside you. You don't crawl into caves. But the nerve that pulled them in is the same one that makes you reach for a marker. The initials. The tattoo you chose at a moment that mattered. The message carved into a bench, the name added to a wall of names, the thing you posted at 2 in the morning that no one needed but you. You were leaving a signal. I was here. This meant something. This was me. And notice who you leave it for. Not yourself, you already know you were there. You leave it for someone who isn't here yet. A stranger. A future. A someone you will never meet and cannot picture. That is the strange, specific shape of this impulse. It is the urge to make a mark that means something beyond yourself, to send a sign forward, into a dark you can't see into, hoping it lands on an eye that doesn't exist yet. The people in those caves did not know your name. They could not imagine your world. But they were aiming at you anyway, at some eye, some future, someone who would one day find the mark and feel it. Across 60,000 years, the signal arrived. You are the eye in the dark they were painting for. You feel the same pull. You have just never had to crawl so far to answer it. And now the part that is hardest to shake. In 2021, in the journal PLOS One, a team led by Maria Angelis Medina Alcaide at the University of Cantabria reconstructed exactly how Paleolithic people lit these caves. They rebuilt the actual tools. Wooden torches, stone lamps burning animal fat, small fires set on ledges, and took them into the dark to see what each one revealed. What they found is quietly devastating. A torch throws light only a few meters and burns out fast. You would need to keep relighting it or carry several. A fat lamp casts a small, warm, steady glow, just enough for one person to work at one patch of wall, and no further. To paint deep in a cave, you needed to plan it like an expedition. Gather fuel in advance. Carry fire through passages where dropping it meant instant, total blackness with no way back. Choose, with every single step, to keep going further from the safe light of the entrance and deeper into the part of the earth that wants you gone. None of this is accidental. You do not end up half a kilometer underground, by firelight, by mistake. Every painting in the deep dark is the end of a deliberate journey toward the dark, which turns the whole question inside out. They did not paint in caves because caves were where they happened to be. They went looking for the darkest place they could reach, and made their most important marks exactly where they would be hardest to find. The art was never meant to be easy to see. The hiding was the point. So why? We don't know. We can't know. The hands that pressed against that stone have been gone for tens of thousands of years, and they left no words. One idea from the archaeologist David Lewis Williams is that the deep cave was a threshold, that in the total dark, by firelight, the mind drifts toward altered states, and the wall becomes a place where another world bleeds through. It is a hypothesis, not a fact. A door, not an answer. But you know the pull. You've felt it in your own hand. The need to leave a mark that outlasts you, aimed at a stranger you'll never meet, sent into a dark you can't see into. They just went further into the dark than you ever will. And the signal still reached you. If the idea that Neanderthals had minds like ours unsettles you, wait until you see what they did with their dead. Watch this next. And subscribe because the human story is older and stranger than you were ever told.